This is the Patrick Henningsen Show on TNT Radio.
All right, folks, welcome back. Final segment, final hour of this live broadcast here on TNT, Today's News Talk. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. Thank you for rejoining us, and great conversation. It's great to get a professional opinion on some of these stories, especially the FISA bill and also the lawfare issue. These are two things that, to me, are a big black mark right now on the U.S. politics. Gerard Filitti, attorney, senior counsel of the Lawfare Project. We'll look more on this topic in the coming weeks. I'm sure it's going to become more relevant, especially during the presidential election cycle. Let me welcome onto the program, however, a great friend of the show, also the host or co-host, if you will, of State of the Nation on TNT Today's News Talk, which airs immediately after our program here. Hesher, a.k.a. Bryan McClain, or Bryan McClain, a.k.a. Hesher, joining us right now. How you doing?
Very good. Good to see you, Patrick. I feel like I haven't been on your show in quite a while. Back in the early days, I was sort of the 2A and Daily Shooter correspondent here, but it's great to be back with you.
Yeah, you're the domestic violence correspondent there early on in the TNT early days, because there were a lot of mass shootings and things happening. So it seemed like every couple of weeks we had to have a powwow to try to pick apart what the hell was going on. It's been quiet on the mass shooting front, luckily, in America, but we got plenty of war overseas to compensate for that. One of the things that has come up recently, and we joke about Ukraine and throwing all the money away there down the sort of proverbial toilet that is Kiev, but that hasn't slowed the U.S. legislature, hasn't slowed Republicans or Democrats, hasn't slowed them down in finding new ways to pipe money over to Zelensky. And this is coming at a time when everybody is kind of admitting now, you're seeing all the pieces now. You're starting to see the think pieces in like Politico or in some of these other journals. We've lost the war. Even the Council on Foreign Relations is writing like commiseration pieces now. We've lost the Ukraine war. Even though everybody seems to be saying that, Hesher, they're still planning this huge package for Ukraine, which somehow, by hook or crook, looks like it's going to make it through Congress. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's insane, you know. I mean, it's hard to get good numbers, but the last time I saw numbers that I felt, resonated, it was over 500,000 Ukrainian men and boys deleted from the planet. And it's like, what would stop this? How do we stop this? Because clearly we've sent hundreds of billions of dollars and countless munitions, ammo, plate carriers, nerfed tanks, all kinds of stuff over there. And we're not seeing any good news, when I say good news, I'm saying, the mainstream is not able to provide anything that supports any sort of inkling that all of this money and all of these death machines that we've sent over there are helping. They don't want to tell us that over 500,000 people have been killed in that conflict, and they want to keep sending money. And this is one of those things that really should cause some dissonance for people all over the West. Where's the success? What is the metric for success? Is the metric to just keep piling more money and more munitions on little green man over there in Ukraine? Or can you give us something? We don't see any footage. Not in the mainstream. You can go to my Telegram accounts and I can see trench warfare, drone warfare, bayonet warfare, things that you would have thought, things that in the 90s we probably would have, we're not going that direction anymore as a society. In the 90s it kind of felt like, well, we've got all these black bag operations, but we could probably trust that there's nothing shady going on there, right? Wink. But no, it just got worse. And now it's like, we're just going to keep sending money. And, over the 2 years or so, most conservatives went from tacitly or openly supporting this conflict to saying, no, this is a waste of our money. And that, I think, is causing some dissonance for people that want to see money go to Israel right now, because, it's like they have to admit that on the one hand, they're saying, yeah, no more money for Ukraine. Too many people get killed. But yeah, we'll we have plenty of money for Israel, where they're doing ethnic cleansing. So it's really caused a bit of a heavy state of dissonance, I would think, for a lot of people.
The crazy thing about this is it's only been like 2.5 months since they passed the last $95 billion aid package that had $60 billion for Ukraine and $14 billion for Israel. So that it's only been a couple of months. It's almost like if we just, if the taps slow down, somehow people are panicking. Oh, they're not going to win this war, or we're going to be letting our allies down. So Speaker Johnson has come up with the solution. Rather than the sort of omnibus route, they're going for sort of separate votes on proposed aid for Ukraine. Then they'll have another session for Israel, and then another one for Taiwan. That's the third front that some people would like to spin up into a conflict zone. So that's an interesting approach to try to get around this. Then you have them basically tacking some of this stuff with other aid and so forth. I know this sort of ban TikTok bill that looks like it's packaged up in all of this. And so like I'm looking at all this and I'm thinking, well, and so how much of this has to do with just pure political posturing, and how much of it has to do with a genuine belief that there's any sort of, strategic objective on the other end? Okay, I can see with Israel, it's kind of hot and heavy right now for Washington, their greatest ally, their greatest friend. They don't want to leave them in the lurch. But Ukraine, I really don't see how this is going to be productive. It's almost like the easiest thing to do for everybody would be to cut their losses, but everybody is so heavily invested, Hesher, in this in Washington. It's almost like they can't. So then you have this zombie scenario where they're just going to be keeping it like on life support system or, the reanimator for the next 8 months. I guess it's to get to the election, right? Is that the finish line, November, or is this going to go into 2025?
Well, November's a big question mark. This could go a number of different ways that could kind of change that answer, but it's definitely going to affect the election. I'm curious if any political or geopolitical event would actually change the outcome of the election. We've been looking at these elections for quite some time now, and the vulnerability and threat vectors within that entire machinery, every single piece of it is questionable at best. So, I'm starting to wonder if the election is not going to be a foregone conclusion. But yeah, it's weird too, because I remember when they were talking about this before, a lot of conservatives were basically saying, no more omnibus bills for multiple countries. We're not going to do that. If you want to put them on the table separately, go for it. We'll likely, not vote for more Ukraine money. And look, here they are. They got a new speaker. They've done exactly that. And it looks like after Johnson's trip to the SCIF, which I forget if it was Edward Snowden or Matt Gaetz that called it the haunted house. You come out of the haunted house, and all of a sudden you've got information that other people don't have. I heard you talking about this earlier in the show, and all of a sudden you're just another one of those voices parroting, well, there's secret information I can't tell you about, but you have to trust me. This is the right thing to do. And now people are calling for him to step down. So, it's a really bad look, and it's amazing that people can remain conservative, with that label, or remain Republican. When the Republican House, they have the majority. That was the one thing that conservatives and Republicans gained in 2022 in that midterm election was that majority. And what has it done for us? They've reinvigorated FISA. I just heard you and Gerard talking about that. That is a huge crime, huge unconstitutional move. They're going to continue sending tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars along to other countries for shady wars that, most people in the West don't even understand or want or support. And all the while, crime is rising, destitution is rising, homelessness is just gone absolutely insane. And you think about the money that they've shipped to these foreign countries and what it could do here domestically if it was applied domestically, And then you think about what Blake Lovewell said yesterday on your show about the GDP and the debt. And it's almost just like, wow, this really all does fit into that theory that, globalism and World Economic Forum policies are really what are at play here. And we're trying to start and foment as many ongoing conflicts as we can and destroy our own economy, because that's what a lot of people think is happening.
Yeah, it's funny. They're also floating some of these Russian stories. I noticed just as the funding package is due to be, confirmed. One of them came out in the Washington Post. Secret Russian foreign policy document urges action to weaken the United States. Plans are afoot by the Russians to weaken its Western adversaries. They're looking for weak points in their Western adversaries. I'm looking, of course, in the fine print of this Washington Post big exclusive today, and it's actually referencing documents that were obtained last year, a year ago. So big breaking news. Anyway, from Germany. So yeah, all the fear mongering is coming now. They want to get these appropriations confirmed, get these billions of dollars earmarked. And what is this at the end of the day? Hesher, it's deficit spending at the end of the day. Hey, let's just run up the deficit. What is it now? 1 trillion per quarter. All this stuff just has dollar amounts attached to it. It's just deficit spending. So, and what do you get with deficit spending? Inflation, right? Debasing of the currency, inflation. What do we have? Inflation. That's what's happening. It's pure and simple. So this stuff does cost, but it doesn't cost them. It costs us. They get inflation adjusted wages in Washington. We don't. They don't have to worry about expenses because that's all covered. We don't. And so the public bears the brunt of all of this extravagant spending. So that seems to me like the big problem here. And we've been banging our heads against the wall on this argument for a very, very long time. And it's so funny, Hesher, I'll get your comments on this. They're always campaigning on this stuff. Oh, the swamp. Oh, this is what they do in the swamp. We got to clean up the swamp. We got to flush all this stuff out. And you get these guys in. So the difference between Speaker McCarthy and Speaker Johnson is Speaker Johnson's not wearing the Ukrainian handkerchief and the lapel pin. Johnson's not wearing that, but the policies are pretty much identical from what I can see. So am I wrong here? I don't know.
No, you're right. And, it's almost like, that clip that you played previously when Gerard was with you. It's almost like that statement, that clip is supposed to be enough for Americans to say, oh, okay, all right, I'll go with more of this. But it's not. It's not enough, I mean, we've got Edward Snowden pointing out on his X.com account, hey, this is awful. This is terrible. This is one of the worst things you can do. And also, the other thing that the 118th did is I'm paraphrasing and going from memory here. Somebody can fact check me in the chat room if you want, but it's my understanding that in this FISA renewal, they gave themselves, clearance from that. Like they're not. You can't go after people inside of Congress with 702.
Oh yeah. They get warning. They get warning if there's any warrant raised or any red flag raised about any of their communications, and they get to see exactly what it is. So again, rules for thee and rules for me, not the same. So yeah, clearly that is another example of the double standard there, Hesher.
Yeah. It's like when they like Gavin Newsom or some of these other governors, they say, well, we're gonna ban assault rifles, yet they're walking around with 4 SUVs packed with assault rifles and operators. It's like it's real easy to say that for everyone else when you don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, and they're sending more than assault rifles to Ukraine, by the way.
Yeah.
Just so, yeah. If it's about weapons of war, folks, Washington's sending plenty of those to destroy the country of Ukraine, to attack Russia, to push the world to the brink of World War III. That's perfectly fine and perfectly okay, and we have billions allocated for that. But bump stocks and rifles and long guns, those are weapons of war in America. Must ban those.
No, I'll tell you what a weapon of war is, Patrick. A weapon of war is something like the J Dam, a 2,000 pound bomb. That is a weapon of war. That is what we should look at as a modern weapon of war, or an Abrams tank, perhaps, or I don't know, M249s. So we could go on and then get into some gray zone about, small munitions that are destructive, but are they actually weapons of war if they've been legal in this country for a long time? I mean, you can't comparing a Armalite rifle, a 5.56 Armalite rifle to something like a 2,000 pound bomb is laughable. It's ludicrous. Anyone who's like a veteran, a soldier, armed citizen, they know the difference. I mean, it's really for the brainwash to use this weapons of war thing. But you make a great point. They certainly don't point out how many pallets of JDAMs they're sending over to Israel right now to drop in Gaza, where I'm trying to figure out what their weapons of war are. I'm pretty sure all they have, if they're lucky, are sticks, stones, and maybe some Kalashnikovs.
Yeah, I would think that, dropping a few hundred JDAMs on densely populated residential areas in Gaza is just as dangerous as somebody walking in with an AR-15 into a school. I would think it's at least equal, deserves at least equal outrage and emotional indignation. Definitely those two scenarios should be at least equal. Someone tell that to the news desk at CNN. They're starting to figure it out, though, after 6 months. You got to give them credit. They're starting to run a little bit of coverage on this stuff now. But how many lives would have been saved if they would have reacted like that in the early weeks following the October 7th event? Who knows how many lives would have been saved? That's the point. So it's pretty incredible. I want to get your thoughts on, just in general, have you been following the conflict in Ukraine? And what are your sort of general thoughts now? We're past the 2-year mark on this, and apparently we're still told by some people that the Ukrainians are brave and they're motivated and they're willing to fight those Russians. So we need to keep arming them. We need to keep giving them weapons to hit those Russians, to hurt the Russians. What do you think about this situation right now, based on what you've observed?
It's pretty horrific, quite frankly. It's a bit of a horror, and it's almost like America and NATO allies are enabling a kind of genocide on the battlefield of what is ostensibly our ally. It's like that country's supposed to be our ally, right? I mean, obviously there's so much stagecraft, and Zelensky is a joke, a joker, a literal comedian, and in the way that he was groomed for that television show, funded by Kolomensky, and then put in the presidency after Maidan. It's like that alone should be enough for Americans to not support sending all this money and weaponry there. Like, if they're really our allies, we would be. I would think if that was really an ally country instead of a place, that's being used as a geopolitical chess piece, then America would be looking for ways to de-escalate the conflict there. But we know that's not what they're doing or what they want to do, because what was that, last year? There was a moment where there was that opportunity. And Boris Johnson, I don't know if he parachuted in or landed in at C-130, probably an American C-130, but he went in and
fell out of the plane drunk maybe.
With his UK flags, and
yeah.
But he stopped that. And now it's like, what was the death toll then? What is the death toll now? It's a massive hit to Ukraine, and it's like, if they were truly our allies, we wouldn't be giving them bad military advice, starting coups in their country, standing by and not reporting it when they, shut down political parties, shut down elections, close churches, tell people what language they can speak and what they can't, go into other countries and conscript people that had, moved there or fled there. All these activities are not the activities of a democratic country, And, I think that is really frustrating to a lot of Americans. And apparently that's something that, even conservatives can agree upon pretty much, throughout the country, although that's obviously not the case with the Israel conflict. But with Ukraine, we can pretty much stand shoulder to shoulder again. It was so weird. It was like, we had COVID, we had Ukraine, we had lawfare, and conservatives, independents, libertarians, center right, center left. We were all kind of like gathering shoulder to shoulder on these things. And then October 7 happens, propaganda starts flying in, JDAMs start flying out, and all of a sudden there's a fracture in the system again. And it's even working on the Democrat side. You may have seen AOC's recent comments, but it's like Democrat actors, political actors are being, given the talking points that, will enrage conservatives. So that all feels very intentional to me and very convenient for a deep state and a, U.S. government, a Biden administration that wants to see us polarized and not see us standing shoulder to shoulder like we were with regards to COVID and Ukraine, albeit it took COVID 2 years so we could get there, and Ukraine about a year before we could get there. So how long will it take with Israel Palestine? That's a big question.
It's getting there. It's getting there. I think it went a long way to getting there over the weekend because penny hasn't dropped yet for everybody, but it certainly will. We can discuss that at a later date, perhaps. Yeah, Boris Johnson. I don't know if you caught his drunken selfie video to social media. Not a good idea to pick up the phone and hit record after you've had a few. You know what I mean? Boris, wasn't in great form. The hair was messed up. And he said, because if Ukraine fails, it will be a disaster for the West. This will put an end to the hegemony of the West, and we will have no one to blame but ourselves. He kind of said the quiet part out loud there with the true serum of English ale. Always a good one. Thank you, Boris. I can't believe he was Prime Minister, Hesher. That itself is quite a miracle. But,
Yeah.
I wonder who they've got lined up next. Yeah, so absolutely. And before we go, and maybe we can schedule a rain check for another conversation, because there's a new war film out, but it's not about a war overseas. It's called Civil War. I know you've seen it. Have you watched it yet?
I haven't actually watched it yet, but I've been very interested in it and kind of following it since the trailers started coming out. I've seen all 4 trailers and a lot of reviews, and I'm keen to see it when I can make time, but I think I know what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a fictional account of a sort of a deep state Democrat fan fiction apocalypse fictional account of what a Trumpian president would look like and how it could lead to a civil war. And of course, the virtuous, center left and lefties and patriots. I'm using my radio and video air quotes if you're on the audio feed, have to, take over Washington, D.C. because, Nick Offerman playing this like Trump style character. I mean, AI could have written it. It's so cliche.
It's like it's a campaign movie, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of it's got clear undertones there. Reminds me of Zelensky. They scheduled this sitcom called Servant of the People a couple of years before the Ukrainian election, where he's this bumbling school teacher who somebody caught on a hot mic when he was on a telephone having a rant to somebody. One of his students filmed it, put it on social media, and they said, "This guy's great. He's the key to corruption, cleaning up corruption in Ukraine. He needs to be the next president." And lo and behold, he becomes president in the show. And after like the 3rd season or whatever, he runs for president. And the name of his party is Servant of the People. So, I mean, that's to the extreme in terms of Veritas programming there for the public. But nonetheless, there are things embedded in this film, some themes that they've put in there to send certain messages across to the public, to press buttons. And maybe we can both watch this film in the meantime, and maybe we can come back and maybe sort of deconstruct it during a segment. We could see what things you picked up in terms of programming, what things I picked up. That would be, I think, be a worthwhile segment. So I extend that invitation open to you in the future.
I'll take it. I was going to go see Dune because I know it's going to be a better movie, but I tell you what, I like this idea, so I'll go see it this weekend. Maybe we can circle back next week and discuss.
I think so. And by the way, the Dune sequel is excellent. It's well produced, but it's a cliffhanger. I think there's a part 3. So again, they're just leaving us hanging for another year and a half. So I don't like these extended serials. Give me the box set. Let's have it all in one go so we can binge watch it. But they're not letting us do that. No, excellent production, Dune. I highly recommend it. If you like science fiction, which I know you do, I do as well. And that's it's a powerful the sound package for that film. Literally, you're shaking in the theater. It's so well designed. The Dolby and all the sort of sound effects and the music and everything. That's an incredible experience. They did an amazing job with. They should win an Academy Award for that. I don't know if they did on the last one, but they definitely deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the scale, the way that they're able to show the size of, the sandworms or the interstellar, ships. I mean, it's really, really convincing. The visuals are really convincing, really well done.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Finally, some decent films. There's not that many of them. I'll tell you that right now. And I'm not
best
really
one since Blade Runner. That series right there, best one since Blade Runner 2042 or whatever the number is on that.
Yeah. Blade Runner is another great one. Again, great soundtrack too. We're nerding out on films here. I'm with Hesher, host of State of the Nation. Bryan McClain, really appreciate you joining us here on TNT, and hopefully I will catch up to you. Be happy to come on your show and talk about what's going on with Iran and Israel. So we'll book something hopefully before the end of the week. So look forward to that.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, and stay tuned for State of the Nation. We'll be up right after the Patrick Henningsen Show.
That's right, folks. Coming right up. So there's going to be top of the hour news headlines coming up. We're going to wrap up the show right now. Stay on TNT. Hesher's going to be there with Tim O'Shea. State of the Nation coming right up on the other side. And thank you very much to our guest, Gerard Felitti, attorney at the Lawfare Project, senior counsel, and also Freddie Ponton, and of course Bryan McClain, aka Hesher, joining us. Another powerful program. Managed to hit some big issues, but wait till you see what we've got lined up tomorrow. That is going to be powerful. Stay here, folks. Tomorrow, same time, same place, and we'll have another great show lined up for you today. In the meantime, I'm Patrick Henningsen signing out. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you tomorrow as well.